responsibility there also, because it's not as if this has been secret information for the last 5 or 6 years.
Thank you.
And so from there, I want to talk about Beecher Terrace. And so with the demolition of Beecher Terrace, also in 2015, there were 726 households in Beecher Terrace. According to the Metropolitan Housing Coalition and LMHA, out of those 726 households, there were 107 involuntary terminations and 19 households who moved to private housing. So there are 100, according to them, there are 199 Beecher Terrace households who are no longer in that system, right? And I want to talk about the impact of this neoliberal housing policy. So we demolished the homes of 726 families. A St. Louis developer named McCormick, Barron, and Salazar now controls that entire site, right, with a 30-year ground lease. They have site control over that. They are basically in charge of that. However, we recently released the Louisville Eviction Lab, where we were able to ascertain all the eviction data for Louisville going back to 2015. And what we found is that between June of 2016 and the demolition of Beecher Terrace in 2019, that there were 524 eviction judgments in Beecher Terrace. And LMHA has offered no explanation for this. We actually saw the eviction judgments increase from 2016 to 2017 from 138 to 223. So in 2017, there were 223 evictions judgments in Beecher Terrace alone. And I think it's important for this council to consider the homicide rate that we're seeing right now. We predicted that there would be a huge spike in homicides from the demolition of 726 households. And this goes back to my question at the beginning of what does it mean to exist across the thresholds of recognition? Because if we went into Prospect and demolished 726 homes, if we went into Bonnycastle and demolished the homes of 726 people, we would acknowledge that there would be a serious disruption of their lives. However, when we do that to poor Black families, it is simply erased from public policy, right? It doesn't make it to the threshold of recognition. And so there's no, there's a great book called Root Shock by a psychologist named Mindy Thompson Fullilove, where she writes about this, and she writes about tearing up urban neighborhoods leads to increases in crime, leads to increases in drug use, leads to increases in all sorts of social and public health factors. And we should not be surprised about that. And so what I'm asking the council to do is to look into this. Someone needs to hold LMHA accountable and ask them, how is it that you had a relocation plan, you have a right to return for these residents, but 524 households were evicted? What we suspect happened is that we know that there weren't enough units to replace these households, and that they used surveillance and different tactics to evict people, because if there was an eviction on their record, they would not be allowed to return. However, we don't really know what happened because there's been no investigation.